Alright, it's part 5 of the crochet tank top series. This is where we finish it up completely. Today we're going to be adding the edging along the bottom, along the neckline, and along the sleeves of this project, and then we'll weave in all the ends and be finished. So again, I'm not using exact stitch counts with this edging because you may have done more rows or less rows than me, and depending on where you seam your project, you might end up with more or less rows. So the good news is with the edging I'm showing in this video is that it's easy to adapt regardless of what size, and I'll just show you the techniques on how you adapt this depending on the number of stitches that you have. And also, this is a great time if you want to add a little extra length along the bottom of your tank top. You can do the bottom edging longer, and of course you can do a completely different edging than what I show in this video. It's your tank top, so obviously make it the way you want. Alright, let's get into it. So at this point our tank top is completely assembled, but I want to give it a little extra touch by putting an edging on it. So I've already gone under one section of the arm. I'll show you that section on the other arm, and we'll do the same type of thing for around the neck and along the bottom of the project. Once more, I'm using the same yarn and the 4.25mm crochet hook. So this border is going to have 2 rounds, and I'm going to be working on this kind of underarm section here to demonstrate. And it doesn't really matter where I start this edging, but I like to choose an area that's a little more discreet, so that way if we don't have an exact stitch count, we have to kind of lose a few stitches or gain a few stitches to make the pattern fit, it won't look weird. So when I work these underarm sections, I like to start down here in this corner. So I'm in the corner here. I'm going to take my yarn and create a slip knot and put that onto my crochet hook. And then I'm going to come to this bottom section of my project. Now I'm going to start with a double crochet. I call this technique a floating double crochet because I'm not already attached to anything. So what I'm going to do is keep my finger here so that way this doesn't twist around the hook. But keeping my finger on the loop that's already on the hook, I'm going to yarn over to prepare for my double crochet. Then I'm going to insert where I'm going to start. So I'm going to put my first stitch right under here, kind of in the corner. And I like to go under 2 strands because if you go under just one, it can kind of pull and look strange. So I'm going under 2 strands, and I'm going to complete this double crochet by yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's my first double crochet, and now what I'm going to do all along the side for this first round is I'm going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and work a double crochet in the following stitch. Chain 1, skip a stitch, work a double crochet into the following stitch. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet. Chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet. So as you can see while I'm working on this, I'm just working all the way around, almost in like a big circle along this edge. Doesn't matter if I'm working on one of the square panels or if I'm working on the strap. I am double crocheting, chaining 1, skipping a stitch, double crocheting, chaining 1, skipping a stitch, and so on all the way around. So I'm going to work until I get back to the beginning. I'll show you how I finish up the round, and then I'll show you the second part of this. So I'm getting close back to where I started, but I'm just going to keep repeating the process of chaining 1, skipping a stitch, and double crocheting in the next stitch. Chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next stitch. And at this point I think I'll do my last chain 1 and then just slip stitch in the top. I could fit another one in there, but I think I'm just going to join the round. So again, this doesn't have to be exact. And if you did your straps longer or shorter than mine, you're going to have a different amount. But just fill it in all the way around, try to keep it looking even, and it'll turn out fine. So we've gone around this part, that would be the sleeve if we were putting sleeves onto this. And so now for round 2. So we've already slip stitched in this very first stitch, and what I'm going to repeat around this time is I'm going to go to my next double crochet, and in that stitch I'm going to work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet again into that same stitch, chain 1, and double crochet a 3rd time into the top of that same stitch. So I've got 3 double crocheting here with a chain between them. After I do that 3rd double crochet, I'm going to go to my next double crochet of the previous round, insert in the top of that stitch, and slip stitch. Then repeat. In the next double crochet, we're going to work a double crochet, chain 1, a second double crochet into the same stitch, chain 1, and a third double crochet into the top of that same stitch. Then go to the next double crochet and slip stitch in the top of that stitch. So one more time, double crochet in the next double crochet, so we're skipping all the chain spaces, then chain 1, a second double crochet into the same stitch, chain 1, and a third double crochet into the same stitch. After the third double crochet, go to the next double crochet of the round and join with a slip stitch. I'm going to repeat that all the way around, and then I'll show you what we do once we get back to the beginning. So if we look here, I'm just about back to where I started. I just have 2 more posts to go. So I just did my third double crochet, so it's time to slip stitch. So what's going to happen is either you will slip stitch and have 1 space left, or you will slip stitch and have no spaces left. If I slip stitched here and didn't have any double crochet from the previous round left, then I would fasten off at this point. But since I have 1 more left, I'm going to repeat the process 1 more time. So I'm going to double crochet in that stitch, chain 1, work a second double crochet in the top of that stitch, chain 1, and a third double crochet in that stitch. And then I'll end the round by slip stitching in the top of the very first stitch of round 1 and then fasten off. So that process is going to put this roughly border on the section we just worked. I'm going to repeat those 2 rows on the neckline here. So going all around this big loop here and along the entire bottom. But I do want to show you how I'm dealing with the V-neck portion of the neckline, because I'm going to do the V-neck portion a little bit different than I did the underarms, so that way I can continue to keep that V shape. But it's a very similar process, so let's jump right in. So this right here is the V in the middle of the back, and I'm again going to start with a slip knot already on my hook, and we're going to start with a floating double crochet. And I'm going to start just to the right of the point here. So I know I want a stitch to end up in the middle of this, so I need to count over 2 spots. So 1, 2 to work my first stitch here. So again, I'm yarning over first, and then I'm going to go into the stitch that's 2 over from the very point of the V and work a double crochet into that stitch. And then what I did for the underarm sections, and what I'll end up doing for the rest of this part, is I did double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. However, when we're at these V sections, we're not going to do a chain 1 between the double crochet. So I've got a double crochet here, we're not doing a chain 1, and then I'm going to insert somewhere through here and work a double crochet. And then I'm going to skip the next stitch, and in the following stitch, work another double crochet. And I'm not doing any chains between these 3 double crochet. That's going to give a little more definition to the V-neck. But after I've gone through that section, now we're going to go back to working the way I showed for the underarm section. So I'm going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and in the following stitch, work a double crochet. I'm going to do this all the way around until I get close to the V-neck on the front. And then we'll do a similar thing on the front like we did here on the back. We just might have to play around with where we place our stitches. So let me double crochet, chain 1 until I get to the front, and then I'll show you that section. Alright, so I've been working around the neckline and I'm getting to the front here. And I'm going to do my chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet, and then I'm going to see where I'm at. So it happened to work out perfectly for me where I have 1 stitch left and then the center piece. So I'm just going to work a double crochet in here without chaining 1. But depending on how large or small your crochet squares are and how long your straps are, you may end up at the stitch right before the point of the V-neck. And if you do, that's okay. Just put a double crochet here, don't chain 1, double crochet in the middle, and then mirror it on the other side. But in my case, I have a double crochet that I can skip. So I'll skip that stitch and then work a double crochet right here in the center. And I'm just kind of going around this middle piece. And again, no chain between these double crochet. And then continuing now on the left side, I'm going to skip the stitch and then go in and do a double crochet in the following stitch. And again, I'm not doing a chain 1 between these 3 double crochet. But once I do these 3 double crochet right there in the point of the V-neck, then I'll go back to the chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet until I get back to where I started. Alright, so I'm almost back to the beginning. This right here is my first stitch, so to finish up the round, I'm going to chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next stitch. And for me, that fortunately means that I have just 1 space left, so I'm going to chain 1 and then slip stitch to join the round. Now, if you didn't have a stitch left, that's fine. You can do a chain 1 between the double crochet, or you could skip the chain 1 and just join with the slip stitch. So now we're ready for the second round. What I need to do is I need a slip stitch to this middle stitch of the V. So into my next stitch, I need a slip stitch over 1 spot. And then from here, we're gonna work round 2 just like we did for the underarms of the sleeves. So in my next double crochet, I'm going to work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then in the next stitch, work a slip stitch, and I'm going to work this all the way until I get to the front. When I get to the front, what I want to make sure is that I end up with a slip stitch in the center of the V-neck. So it might just happen to work out that if you just keep working the pattern, you'll automatically end up with a slip stitch in the center of the V-neck on the front. However, if that's not the case, we'll need to shift our stitches over at some point so that we do end up with a slip stitch in the center of the V-neck. I'm going to keep working around the side, but I'll show you what I'm talking about once we get to the V-neck. So I'm almost to the point of the V-neck, so in my next stitch I need a slip stitch. And this worked out perfectly for me because I can do my 3 double crochet in this spot and then be able to slip stitch in the point. But let's say that instead of this stitch being the point, that this stitch was the point and I had just tacked down here. Well, instead of repeating my process in the point, I would slip stitch in this stitch and in the following stitch. So slip stitch in the center of the V and the stitch following it, and then go back to my pattern, so that way I don't have a ruffle worked in the point of the V. But in my case, I have room for 1 more shell, so I'm going to work it right here. Work that double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and a 3rd double crochet in the same spot. And then in the point of my V-stitch, I'm going to work a slip stitch. And I'm going to repeat this pattern all the way around for the neckline, and I'm going to do the same exact process that I did on the sleeves for going along the bottom. And for going around the bottom, I'm not going to worry about doing anything different at the peaks and valleys. I'm just going to work along evenly, just like I did with the sleeves. So I'm going to finish putting the border on here, weave in all 1,000,000 of my ends, and then I'll show you the finished result. So there you go, that is the crochet tank top. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. I know I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm excited that it's finally done and that I can wear it. And of course, if you make this, be sure to tag me on Instagram. I don't remember my handle, so I'm just gonna pop it up on screen here. And if you do tag me, I might not see it right away because I'm kind of bad about remembering to check that account, but I will see it eventually, and I really enjoy seeing y'all making the projects that I teach. It's really exciting for me. So be sure to tag me on Instagram if you make this project. And of course, if you have any questions about any part of making this tank top, be sure to drop a comment down below. I'll do my best to help you out so that way you can get this project completed and put together. And as I mentioned earlier, my hope is to have the blog rebuilt very, very soon. I feel like I've been saying that for a while, but when the blog is rebuilt, I will put this pattern up there, and I'll link to that in the description so that way you can have that as an extra resource. But thanks so much for following along with this project, and I'll see you in my next video. Happy crafting.
I chopped part of your head off for a moment. Is that okay?
That's fine.